And welcome once again to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollock, your host for this segment. And I'm very happy to have with me today Ted Hartwell, who's the project director for Desert Research Institute's Community Environmental Monitoring Program. And we will identify what that is in just a second. For those of us that have worked in the field, like I was with the Yucca Mountain Project, I know what that is, I know what that was, and what it will be in the future, and why it's there. So let's have Ted tell us a little bit about what he does and why those monitors are there, where they are also. That's very important, and what they do.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. The Community Environmental Monitoring Program is a network of radiation and weather monitoring stations that are set up in communities surrounding and downwind of the Nevada National Security Site, which most people still know as the Nevada Test Site. I think if you've lived in this area for any length of time, but
I'll take that to my grave.
Yes. Principal nuclear testing ground, continental nuclear testing ground for the United States for about 4 decades. It's a program that's funded through the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration, but it's entirely administered by the Desert Research Institute, which is part of the Nevada system of higher education. And what makes this program a little bit unique is that it is managed by members of the public who live in one of 23 different communities that we have around the site, and we provide them with an education and background on what ionizing radiation is, which of course is one of the principal things of concern when you talk about nuclear weapons testing is the radioactivity that's produced and may remain behind. We train them also to collect samples from those stations, make sure they're running properly, and also be the primary points of communication for members of their community who may have questions about what's gone on in the past or what may be going on at the site now.
So, well, actually, we could find daily readings if we know where to look. What's the website we would go to?
So that would be at cemp.dri.edu. And you can find near real-time readings for all of the sensors at the station. So that includes not only your background gamma radiation, but also all of your meteorological sensors, wind direction and speed, temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, and so on.
Some of them are updated hourly and some are every 10 minutes.
That's correct.
See, I read.
Yes. Been doing your research.
Yes, I have. I haven't been looking at them recently until the winds picked up this whole spring, and I wanted to verify how fast the winds were, and because it was just about blowing the tiles off my house. So I wanted to check what you were reading over, not you, but CEMP was reading down there too. So it brought me back, and I says, I know what I'll do. So I found out where it was, and maybe we could take a look at what our station looks like and in town. This is a beautiful shot of it in the morning as soon as we get it. There it is. That's what it looks like. The sun's coming up. That's over on 160, basically across the street from Home Depot. Next to the planning department, actually. And all those monitors are on there. You want to put the other one with the different there, and then you could explain what some of those things are?
Sure. So the boxy looking red device there is our pressurized ion chamber, and that is the instrument that's producing the background gamma radiation readings that you'll see both in real time at the station or if you go on the website. And if you were to open it up, you'd essentially see a metal sphere that's about basketball sized, and it's pressurized at about 300 pounds per square inch of argon gas. And as gamma rays come through and interact with the atoms of gas, it produces a little pulse that we measure electrically, and we can determine kind of what your background gamma radiation is based on that activity. We also have a full suite of meteorological equipment. As I mentioned, the anemometer up there on top, which is measuring wind speed and direction. We have a tipping rain gauge bucket that measures precipitation. Each 1/100th of an inch, the little sensor inside will tip as that fills up.
I think you better check it because I think it's rusted shut now because we have the amount of rain we've had in the last couple of years.
It's very possible. And also we have sensors that measure your
Ground temperature.
ground temperature, air temperature, barometric pressure, and humidity. I think I covered everything.
Yes. So that's in every one of the stations that we have.
That's right. And in addition, we have a continuously running air sampler at most stations. So that's what's causing the noise if you walk up to one of these stations. And that is pulling air through a filter that's collected once every 2 weeks by our local representatives and then sent into DRI. And then we process those and send them off to an independent laboratory for analysis of other types of radioactivity.
And we could find all those test results also, right? Besides the daily test results.
That's correct. On the website, you
Right.
can find those quarterly analyzed samples. That's right.
So there's, everything that's there is for our perusal, so to speak. So who do we have here in town that is
So-
caretaker?
Here in town, we have Bob Hopkins and
Steve Goins?
oh my goodness, Larry Goins.
Larry Goins, that's
Yes.
what it was, yeah.
Long time. He's been on the program longer
right.
than I have, I believe.
Yes, I remember that name now, yes. And he was with the high school, he's probably retired now?
I don't know if he's retired or not. I think he may still be involved with the golf team, if I'm remembering correctly.
okay.
But
So his name is, and his email address is on the site also. If you would like to call him for any information. And possibly he does speaking. He speaks to groups or no?
he can. He'd probably be more likely to facilitate a presentation where we would come out from DRI and support any subject related to either ongoing or past activities at the site that people are interested in. The best way for someone to do that is to get in touch with one of our local representatives through that brochure or through the sign on the station, and then we'll set something up for you.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So you have, I know there's one in Las Vegas next to the Atomic Testing Museum.
Yes.
Where's that moving?
The museum may be moving in a couple years, but the station will
stay
likely
to-
stay on DRI's campus.
So we know where ours is. There's one in Beatty.
That's correct.
That one is rather important too, because that is monitoring groundwater or the tritium.
Yes, the station itself isn't monitoring the tritium, but Beatty is one of the communities where we have our local representative identify a water source that they would like to be tested, and that's usually the municipal water source itself.
Yes, well, that I was involved with the community advisory board. That's why, the UGDA project. So that's why that's one of the more important sites also because of the underground testing. It was closest to the edge of the Nevada test site, so
That's
to
right.
speak. Yes, and then we have one all the way out into Copa.
Yes.
Yes, and then the collar counties all the way around the Nevada test site. We have in is there Goldfield has one?
Goldfield, yes. Rachel has one. That's the one to pick up all of the extraterrestrial emanations that may be.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
But
Alamo, Caliente, Pioche,
Yes.
on up to Ely, and Duckwater Shoshone tribe also has one.
oh, that's right. That's way out there. Yeah. So if you want to do a nice RV trip sometime, you can go. Maybe you can get a little stickers you can give people. They make the circuit. That would be great.
That's a good idea.
Yes. Learn a little bit about the CEMP. So anything interesting you found through the years with the stations?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there have been some pretty important moments. I think the most dramatic one was when we had the tsunami, the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, in recent history at least, that knocked out the power plant at Fukushima Daiichi. And This network was the first to both detect and publicly report radionuclides from that accident here in the state of Nevada. And while we did not see that in the real-time monitors, the levels were much too low. Once we analyzed the paper filter samples on those stations, we could identify radionuclides we knew were coming from that accident in Japan and say, yes, they've made it across the Pacific and they are here. And part of the importance of that was showing that network, number one, is functioning as it's supposed to. We can pick up radionuclides from a source several thousand miles away, but we're also not seeing any of those same radionuclides of concern from a source just 75 miles up the road where they did active testing for quite a few decades. And we were also able to use our public representatives to get the message out that, please don't rush out and buy any medication or potassium iodide pills, because the levels we're seeing, while we know they're coming from Japan, they are thousands to millions of times less than what we're exposed to from the natural environment 24/7.
So, what year was that?
2011.
11, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yes. So that did pick that up then.
Yes.
Yes, but then we had to throw that out because that wasn't normal for what we have here. So you have, I think we went over that, the weather instrument, exposure rate recorder, decimeter, particulate sampler. And so what else would we have to look at if we saw them?
Well, I want to mention one of the nice things about the website is all of the data that's been collected since DRI took over the program in 1999 is archived on that website. So if you're interested, for example, in just looking at the temperature variation over the past 23 years here in Pahrump on a specific date, you can graph that out very nicely, or graph variables on top of one another and see how things like precipitation affect the natural background radiation that you're measuring, things like that. So it's a really neat tool for kids, especially in the schools who are interested in how data is collected and presented, and to look at trends through time.
Oh, that would be interesting to get them in a little bit more involved. Education is definitely lacking here in the United States. But I want to thank you for taking time and coming out here and visiting with us.
Absolutely.
And then
thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. And welcome back to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollock, your host, with Ted Hartwell, the project director for DRI's Community Environmental Monitoring Program, CEMP. And we gave you a little explanation about what he does in his full-time work, or somewhat full-time work, or what it has been for. How long have you done that?
I've been the manager of the program for about 23 years.
Oh my God.
So most of my DRI career, I guess.
Interesting. And you've gone through a lot of local folks from the different stations, I imagine.
Yes, although surprisingly, there are people with a great deal of longevity on this program. One of the concerns DOE had when this program first came into being 40 years ago, over 40 years ago now, is that there might be very high turnover among the public representatives on the program. And in fact, we found the opposite to be true. We literally had a few folks retire over the past 3 or 4 years that had been with the program since the very first year. And so I think most of them have enjoyed the opportunity and what they've learned on the program, and the ability to communicate that to their communities and their students.
I can understand that. I started this 18 years ago. God forbid I'm still here. I must like what I'm doing. But, and you do, you have people go, I remember going up to Utah one time. You did a weekend up there? To like a retreat?
Yes, we have an annual workshop. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten up out of the heat in quite a few years, but we used to always have that at Bryan Head, Utah, which was a wonderful place to go in July. But for most of the past decade, we've been in Las Vegas or a couple outlying communities. This summer, we'll actually be in Tonopah for a day, July 30th.
So another one of your loves is besides that, and I know is the Las Vegas Philharmonic. And what is it, the cello?
The cello, that's correct.
Yes, you've been playing that all your life too?
I've been playing cello since the age of 10. Started with piano at age 5, and picked up the cello at age 10.
All right, and also other research areas. I did research on TED too, anthropology and archaeology research, and that's how I got in. I connected with you. You did some a booklet for Yucca Mountain, I believe it was, the archaeology.
That's right. Yes, I was originally hired by DRI in 1991 to supervise cultural resource investigations out on the site. So we would go out ahead of any of DOE's ground disturbing work, whether they were going to put in a trench or a tunnel or something like that. And prior to that activity, we would survey the ground to see if there was an important archaeological site there that needed to either be protected or collected before they would engage in that activity.
And then naturally the radiological monitoring, but also problem gambling and responsible gambling.
That's right.
I know UNLV has a lot of courses with gambling too.
That's correct. International Gaming Institute is a world-recognized institution that looks at all aspects of gaming, from the economics to responsible gambling activities and even some problem gambling research. And this is an area I became interested in because of my own struggles. Actually, about 15 years ago, I developed a very serious gambling addiction that reached its head at that time. And as I was getting into recovery, I think as most of us who are afflicted by an illness that we don't understand, I kind of gobbled up all of the research I could get my hands on, and became very interested in the idea of public advocacy and education on this issue. It's something that affects a lot of Nevadans, especially. We have one of the highest rates of problem gambling among our own citizens than any state in the country, maybe as high as 6%. So that's 1 out of every 16 people or so you bump into on a daily basis is often struggling with a problem, and helping illuminating what the resources are for treatment and getting help. Because in the state of Nevada, you can actually get free treatment for a gambling problem, regardless of whether you have insurance or a penny to your name, as can others who are affected by somebody else's gambling problem. So that's a really important aspect.
I have heard that, yes. So many other states really don't care.
That's right. And Nevada, unfortunately, does not rank highly among all the states that fund this. We're somewhere in the middle.
Are we?
Unfortunately, but we're getting there.
And did I read you're doing gambling issues with the Native Americans?
Yes, I kind of connected back to my early archaeological roots, and some of the Native Americans I had worked with in my archaeological days. And as I was getting into recovery, I happened to have a chance conversation with actually a member of the Pahrump Paiute, as it turns out. Not a federally recognized tribe yet,
No.
but family had lived out here for generations, and we had a discussion, and I happened to mention my own struggles and recovery, and wondered aloud, is this an issue in tribal communities, and does anybody talk about it? And he said, well, it is, and he spoke about a family member who had impacted his family greatly, and said it's not talked about. We tend to focus on a lot of other issues that we have, and he encouraged me, and I later set up a program that was essentially a public outreach to tribal communities, and a 57-question survey to gather data on personal habits and personal attitudes about gambling, and whether or not people thought it was an issue in their community, and if so, if they were aware of resources. And so it was very gratifying for me to be able to make a connection to a group of people that I hadn't so far to that point, but also that had been an important part of my career professionally as well.
It's very good that you could connect with them, because a lot of times Native Americans are a very closed society.
Very much so. And I had actually a co-investigator who was Cherokee herself. Okay. So she, from a cultural standpoint of view, helped the process tremendously, helped me learn things and not make some missteps that I might have otherwise. And she herself actually is a nationally certified problem gambling counselor. So we were very complementary, she being a therapist and myself being a researcher and someone who'd been affected. And we did a lot of personal storytelling, which is very important in tribal communities.
It is, very
and,
much so, yeah.
You know, conveying information and culture. So that helped smooth the process tremendously and helped the acceptance and really embracing of what we were bringing, because our primary goal, quite frankly, wasn't just the research. It was connecting people who were struggling to resources.
Yes, otherwise they would just keep on going, and they wouldn't know where to go for help from the white person, basically.
I speak from personal experience,
Yeah.
not knowing for a very long time
Yeah,
that there
you
was
had to-
even help out there.
Yeah, you
quite
opened the door
frankly,
for
you
them.
know.
Yeah, that was great.
So.
And then you made the connection out here with the Paiutes, you said?
Well,
By
it was
chance?
it was a chance conversation.
Yeah.
He, also, is a consultant to DRI, or has been in the past, and so already had that personal connection. So it made the conversation very easy, and he helped make some of the connections later on to some of his colleagues and friends in other tribes, which helped.
I won't name that name, but I'll run that by you after
Okay,
the show.
yeah.
Yes. But so anything else that's been interesting in your life
Well,
besides, how's the Philharmonic been?
Philharmonic's been fantastic. I've played with the Las Vegas Philharmonic ever since they formed in 1999. So all 23 seasons minus.
Just 99 it started?
That's right. Minus one during the pandemic, of course, when we were completely dark. But it's been an amazing side career for me. And I was mentioning to you before we started that I had the opportunity to play with the Eagles at the MGM this past weekend. A group that was already a thing when I was a little kid. I remember my mom playing their music around the house, and to get to play with that group was just a thrill of a lifetime.
Oh my goodness, yes. Do you get to go places with them, or is that just something that's here?
That was just this was the last stop on their Hotel California tour. They started in Vegas about 3 years ago, and this was their
And you were the
final
pickup
one.
band with them?
That's right, yeah. They hired 39 string players to back them up
Wow.
on 6 different songs. Yeah.
And where'd you play that at?
At the MGM Grand Garden Arena.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you got in for free.
Got in for free and got paid to be there even, so.
Oh, you can't beat that, yeah. So, yeah, that must be really interesting. Do you ever have any other groups that you play with?
Yes, I've had the opportunity to play with many personalities that have come through the Strip and needed to hire additional orchestras. Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, Sarah Brightman, and a couple cover bands, some really good Beatles and Led Zeppelin cover bands, in addition to subbing occasionally for a Broadway show or two, things like that. So a lot of different fantastic opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing this for myself, not necessarily for you. It's extremely interesting. I've had a lot of these questions throughout the years. I wanted to ask you because, you're with the Philharmonic and stuff, so you got to be pretty good to do that, right?
Well, or else I, got in
luck.
at the right time. I knew the concertmaster, and we'd played some gigs together. So I was fortunate enough to get in without doing a formal audition when the orchestra was just forming.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of arose out of the ashes of the Nevada Symphony Orchestra and those musicians, but they needed more musicians, and so part of that was right place at the right time. But yeah, it's a fantastic group, and we're one of the groups in residence at the Smith Center, and so folks that are interested can come hear us play this next season starting in September.
The Smith Center is just fantastic. It's not regular Vegas. It seems like it doesn't belong there, but it's just so opulent, or it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got class. That's what it is. So, and you were telling me earlier that you're going to be retiring from the CEMP?
I am. I'm kind of in a phased retirement right now. I'm 50% at DRI and 50% with the Nevada Council on Problem Gambling.
Okay.
That's been where my passion has been for a little while now, and so I will I will, in a little over a year, move on from DRI and move into a full-time position as the executive director of the Nevada Council on Problem Gambling. So a late life career change, and I'll give it at least, I promised myself at least 3 years in that role. And if I'm still having fun and enjoying it and the board likes my work, then I'll continue. And if not, I'll just play music and mostly retire.
So, well, again, I thank you for taking the time to come down here and be with us. And then we'll look at your predecessor. Is that what before or after?
Successor.
Successor,
Yes.
the other way. We'll have that person on afterwards, after you're gone. So thank you for watching. Thank you for stopping by. And we'll see you next week. And he's not there to cut the tape, and we're just going to keep rolling and keep on going, and we'll go on and on and on and on and on and on and on.